Hmm. Good. Jesus, it's so loud. Oh.
What if I told you that breakfast being the most important meal of the day was wrong? What if I told you it is more important when you eat than what you eat? Perhaps much of the nutritional dogma that we've been raised with is now outdated, like snacking all day long and eating mini meals. Over the next few minutes, I plan to discuss with you what I believe to be the most profoundly transformational concept and strategy as it pertains to health and aging. Over the last 20 years as a nurse practitioner and a functional nutritionist, I've seen tremendous shifts in health and wellness. Escalating rates of obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease, many of which are preventable. The choices we make in terms of nutrition are profoundly impactful on our health, more than most of us realize.
I need to add way more.
During my training as a nurse practitioner many years ago, the dominant nutritional paradigm was exercise more, eat less. I have found this to be profoundly ineffective for most, if not all, of my female patients. The concept of calories in, calories out alone is just not effective. Many of the things that I work with my female patients really focus on the connection between our lifestyle choices and how that impacts healthy aging and weight gain. I do not believe, nor do I support, the limiting belief that women have to accept weight gain is a normal function of aging. The National Health and Nutrition Exam Survey, which looks at data on with regard to children and adults in terms of their nutrition and escalating obesity rates, compares what went on in the 1970s, where most Americans consumed 3 meals a day and no snacks. Fast forward to today, most of what we are doing as Americans is eating 3 meals a day and snacking all day long. Really. And so one of the things that starts to happen when healthcare providers are telling our patients that we need to eat all day long, it's wrong. Eating all day long overtaxes our pancreas and our digestive system. It overtaxes it so much that it cannot work properly. And if it cannot work properly, we cannot absorb our food or the nutrients in that food. Another really important distinction when it comes to meal frequency or how frequently we're eating is the debate over sugar burners versus fat burners. And when we're talking about that, a sugar burner is someone that consumes lots of carbohydrates and taps into glucose as their primary fuel source, which is incredibly inefficient. If you recognize these individuals, they are frequently hungry, they often get hangry, they have significant dips in their energy level. They struggle more with fat loss and they struggle more with their weight because insulin levels are high. Insulin
It's
is
either
that
earthquake or
fat-storing
train.
hormone. So if levels remain high, we have more oxidative stress, we have more inflammation, and we struggle more with weight gain. In sharp contrast to this are fat burners. They tap into fat stores for energy.
What?
They
It's
have
been
sustained
delivered?
energy. They are much more clear cognitively. They don't get hangry. It's easier for them to lose weight because they tap into those fat stores. They sleep better and they age more slowly. So meal timing and how frequently we are eating is absolutely crucial. Absolutely crucial. Let's talk about some statistics as they pertain to women and healthy aging. So we know 2/3 of women 40 to 50 years of age are overweight and more than half are obese. How do we proactively address this statistic without quick fixes? It makes me want to cry when my female patients would prefer I write them a prescription than work on changing their diet, more exercise, other lifestyle changes. Women in their 50s and 60s gain an average of 1.5 pounds per year. Per year, that's average. And some of this is attributable to things like hormonal fluctuations, women having less lean muscle mass than their male counterparts, sleep disturbances, and mood disorders. However, there are strategies we can use to help offset this. So folks, I want you to save your money on potions and powders and supplements that are not long-term solutions. I've got a better idea, and I'm going to tell you about it. I've got a better idea. There are lots of strategies that I use with my female patients, but none more powerful than intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting can help fuel fat loss, as well as many other benefits that I'll talk more about in a second. But it also can improve interpersonal relationships and self-esteem. And for many women, this permits them, it's the magic bullet that allows them to gain back their former selves. Really powerful. And the really cool thing about intermittent fasting is it's free, it's flexible, and it's simple. You take nothing else away. It's free, flexible, simple. So let's talk about intermittent fasting. It is the absence of food during a prescribed time period. You exist either in a fed or a fasted state. I'm sure for many of you, you had breakfast this morning. So when you eat, insulin is secreted by the pancreas to move sugar into the cells. We store the bulk of our sugar in our liver and our skeletal muscle. But when we exceed those storage sites, we store it as fat. When we're fasted, insulin levels are low, and we can tap into fat stores for energy. Free, flexible, simple. And so when we're talking about intermittent fasting, it's fairly simple. If you skip breakfast in the morning, you can reduce your caloric intake by 20 to 40%. And the typical time frame that I recommend to my female patients is a 16-8. 16 hours a day fasted with an 8-hour feeding window. I know that seems a little overwhelming at first, but I'll give you some strategies for how you go about doing that. So the 20 to 40% reduction in calories means that you can fuel fat loss. So what are some of the benefits other than fat loss? Fat loss, and especially visceral fat around our abdomens, around our major organs. We know that it improves mental clarity because insulin levels are low. We know that it spikes human growth hormone, which helps us with lean muscle mass. We know that it induces something called autophagy. I'll speak more about this in a second. But this is spring cleaning for the cells. It is only evoked when we are fasted. Autophagy. We know that it lowers insulin levels, blood pressure, improves our cholesterol profile.
Appreciate everything that he does, everything that he comes with.
I've seen this already.
Hello, health champions. Is it safe to exercise while you're fasting? What really happens in the body when you're doing fasting or intermittent fasting? Where does the energy come from? Today, I'm going to answer all those questions, plus a few questions you didn't even know you had, that you've been wondering about ever since you were a kid. Coming right up. Hey, I'm Dr. Ekberg. I'm a holistic doctor and a former Olympic decathlete. And if you want to truly master health by understanding how the body really works, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you can keep learning about how to get truly healthy. In order to talk about whether it's safe to exercise and fast, we first have to understand where does the energy actually come from. And we have to get rid of a few myths. You've always been told things like, if you don't eat any breakfast, you won't have any energy. Make sure that you get frequent snacks so you can boost your energy. And you have to eat protein immediately after a workout because otherwise you won't be able to build muscles. And you should eat so that you feel better. But if you feel better after you eat, was it actually the food you ate that made you feel better, or was it something else? Let's talk about the facts. Whenever you eat something, it comes down through your esophagus, and it's going to sit in your stomach for 2 to 5 hours. Your body is going to work on it, it's going to churn it, it's going to massage it, it's going to add enzymes and hydrochloric acid, but you're not going to utilize it because it's not ready for that. The only thing you can absorb to some degree in small amounts are things like water, alcohol, and glucose. That stuff goes out a little bit faster. But if you eat a whole fruit, there's going to be no alcohol, obviously, and there's going to be very, very little glucose in there. So if you eat fruit, then a tiny percentage of that fruit is glucose, free glucose. Nothing else, no fat, no protein, and no molecule bigger than a single molecule is going to get absorbed. That's going to happen much later in the small intestine. So it sits for 2 to 5 hours in the stomach. Then when it's ready, it moves into the small intestine. That's this squiggly, convoluted thing here. And that's where most of the nutrient absorption takes place, but that's 4 to 12 hours after you ate the food. So here's the big question. How come then that you feel better after eating? How do you feel satisfied? How do you feel energized when you're not using any of that yet? Because the food stimulates things. It creates an expectancy in the body. So you're stimulating hormones and you're starting to break down glycogen to raise blood sugar and feel satisfied because the body knows, hey, I can use up this glycogen because you just ate, so I'm going to be able to fill up the stores in a little bit. And if all of this is true, which it is, then what about the nutrients for exercise? What about all the calories and all the energy and all the stuff you need for exercise? Well, the same thing is true. It does not come from the food you just ate. Nutrients are absorbed in the small intestine 4 to 12 hours after you eat the food. And what that means is that the energy that you're using in this moment, whether it's just for everyday activity or whether it's for exercise, doesn't come from the meal that you just had. It comes from nutrient pools. And you have glycogen, that's the extra glucose, the extra carbohydrate you eat gets put together into glycogen and stored in the muscles and liver, and that'll last you 12 to 24 hours. You have fat that will last you 1 to 12 months. If you're super skinny, you still have about a month worth of fat that you could live off. If you're obese, you could make it up to a year. Some vitamins that are water soluble will last you for a few days or weeks, but others, even if they're water soluble or fat soluble like B12 or vitamin D, will last you for years. The body has a way of storing them. And protein, which you don't want to use for energy, but you could, will last you for weeks. So we have to rethink this idea about eating something to get energy. Your body asks you to eat. You create hunger so that you can keep up with your energy expenditure. But what you're eating now is going to be processed and stored and used later. You are not going to run out of fuel in the next couple of hours or days. If that was the case, then humans would never have survived. Whenever we were without food for a day, then we would just kind of wither down and lay down and die, and we wouldn't have the energy to go out and catch more food. The only reason that we have this idea of eating and getting energy and feeling better in this moment is that we have trained a behavior into our system. We've become carb dependent, and in a sense, we've created a drug habit. We've created, because anytime that you eat something and it changes how you feel, it's kind of a drug. It's a form of stimulation. And if we train the body into a rhythm that becomes a habit, now we have a drug habit. Of course, it's not like a heroin habit or anything, but it's still a drug habit. And that is why we believe that we have to top off our energy stores every couple of hours. That's not the case. Now, getting back to the question of the video, is it safe to exercise when you're fasting? Well, it's going to depend, all right? It depends on the type of exercise you're going to do. It's going to depend on the duration of the exercise. Are you going to go for seconds or minutes or hours? The duration of the fast. How long have you fasted and how long do you plan to continue fasting? And also very important, how have you trained your metabolism? Is your body fully fat adapted? Does it know how to use fat for fuel primarily, or is it still carb dependent? Now let's come back to that question of where does the energy come from?